Okay, so welcome back. So we're looking again at the Lean Launchpad approach. We talked a little bit about the business model canvas. So let me go ahead and move on and share with you again the screen. Okay, so again, we're looking at the business model canvas. Yeah. And so we looked at the 9 aspects of the business model canvas. So I put this back here so we could refresh. Remember, we look at the value proposition and we look at the customer segments and we figure out what we're going to do, what the value is. Number 2 is who is going to be our customer. And then kind of the other things will flow through. But today we're going to look at 1 and 2. We're going to look at the value proposition and also at the customer segment. Let's talk about the value proposition then. Okay, so the value proposition and the customer discovery, these are the first 2 things on the business model canvas, and these are probably the 2 most important aspects of it, because you have to have a good value proposition and you need to find those customers. So let's look more in depth at this first aspect of the canvas, and this is the value proposition. Okay, so I found this picture, actually came from one of my colleagues. This is a great invention somebody came up with, and they're called hander pants. These are underwear for your hands. Okay, so hander pants. And so this is very novel. You probably haven't seen these before. It's a brand new idea. It's never been invented. It's innovative, but does anybody want them? Is there a value proposition to making these? Are you going to get rich with these? Probably not. So what's the difference between innovation for innovation's sake, novelty, and actual value? So these hander pants are a novelty. You might sell 1 or 2. I don't know where you would sell them, but maybe you would. But it's not really value, okay? It's just a silly thing that somebody comes up with that's innovative, but there's no value. There's nobody going to be buying these up, getting in line on Black Friday to buy these types of things. So you have to give the customer a value. That's the value proposition. Okay, so here's a link. I want you to watch this when you come through the slideshow again. This is a 3-minute video from Steve Blank, and he introduces briefly the idea of the value proposition. But here's a graphic from Steve Blank that talks a little bit about how you come up with the value proposition. So what do your product features do? Okay, so you look at what comes together, what makes it valuable to somebody. And so I mentioned earlier about pains and gains, okay? So a pain is a customer problem or need, something that customers need to have or want to get fixed, okay? And then the gain is a customer solution. So your gains help address what you can offer the customer. And the key here is your products and services, they all come together into what we call the minimal viable product. And so what do your customers think is important? What are the key features, services, so on that you build? So again, you need to think about who's going to be using your app and what features are going to be important. Okay? So how are you going to find that out? You're going to use it, you're going to create your app, play around with it, ask a couple of friends to play around with it, some family to download it, see if they like it. Is that really going to tell you everything you need to know about how good your app is and if it's addressing customer needs? Probably not. So the minimal value proposition is, what does it take to really get somebody to buy your product? Okay. You want to have painkillers. In other words, you want to fix problems for that customer. You want to give them gains, things that they didn't think they wanted. And you do this with your products and services. So these are the things you need to look at. Whatever your app is going to be doing, figure out what pains it's trying to get rid of, what gains it's offering, and how you get that together into this minimal value proposition. Okay. So we talked about this a little bit briefly as well. Your customer, you need to understand your customer. So what is the archetype? Who's the persona that you're going to have? What are your customers going to look like? What are their jobs? What problems or needs do they have? This is going to answer a lot of your questions, okay? If you're doing a video game and it's a game for young children, then you can look at the typical young child and the kind of apps that they want to use, right? What kinds of pains and gains that you do. And so you look at the audience for your app. It could be young people for games. It could be teenagers, young adults for more complex games. It can be a business app. It can be a social media app. You have to understand how your app is going to be used and who's going to use it. So understanding your customer is a very key first aspect to the business model canvas. Okay, so this graphic here, it's very hard to see because it's very fine, but you'll be able to pull it up in the slideshow and look at it in more detail. But basically, this brings two aspects together of the value proposition for your canvas, okay? This brings together, again, the value proposition and the customer segment, okay? So we look on the right, again, the customer has pains, they have gains, and they have jobs that they're trying to do, okay? Now your value proposition, so the right is the, again, the customer, and on the left is your present, your great gift to them, your product, and you're going to address their gains, and you're going to be a gain creator. The pains that they have, it's going to become a pain reliever. And you're going to offer products and services all around this product that will help the customer complete their job. And we'll look at this in more detail as well. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more in detail about the customer segment of Canvas. Okay, so you can give your customers, you can get information that reduces their guesswork. You have a new feature that appeals to them that they didn't know they had, something that accelerates their process. You can have something that reaches to a broad audience and the ability to minimize their work by using the software. There's all different types of things that you look at. So depending on who the gains are. Okay, so this is color coded. So for device manufacturers, they may want to look at things that medical devices that help patients. The customer's job, you can help design, build, and sell the devices. The pains that the customers have, they have to appeal to providers to sell to the patients, create data, FDA process approval, and things like that. So you can look at different customer segments for different types of things. So let's look at third-party app developers. They want to reach, the gains you can do is reach to a broad audience, ability to minimize the work required by the user to use the software. So you can make your software easier to use or easier to use than other people's software. The pains that they have, the device data is restricted in closed databases, so maybe open up the databases. And then the customer jobs, build software that engages people with information, and this is cut off for diabetes. But you could look at your customers and develop the app to better do that. So it's all about understanding the customer and developing what they want. Okay, so now let's look at, again, the actual product and the value proposition. So again, if we look at the different types of markets that we have, let's again look at the third-party app developer. What kind of gains creation can they do? They can give you interoperability with lots of devices and apps and representing millions of patients, a huge barrier to adoption. So again, if you're creating some software and you want to get it out to everybody, the idea of a third-party app developer can really be nice for a customer, for a company. Okay, as far as the pain relievers, the FDA-approved platform allows to focus on adding value through the app development. Okay, so Maybe this is, again, for prescription medicine or something like that, and you're going to make it easier for them to get that. And then the products and services, as you can look at the FDA approval and use their open data platform and hosting services for your product. Okay, so this is what you get when you work on your value proposition canvas. So most of us are going to be developing the app on ourselves, but these are the kinds of things that help to have other people working with. So again, we kind of look at the same graphics that we had before. On the right, customers; on the left, product. The wants, the needs, and their fears. And for the product, the benefits, the features, and how you can improve the experience. Okay. So, and then we have a little thing called substitutes, other things that we can use for the experience. So if we look at this particular example, maybe a customer wants wants to get prestige, wants to get into the social environment, wants to grow the team. Well, you can match that their wants with your benefits, offer them ways to grow faster, to learn faster, and have a productive environment. For the needs, the customer may need better productivity, maybe they need funding, maybe they need advice. And some of the features that you can offer them is quiet space, customized investment, and collegial community. So you can do these things to give them the needs that they're looking for. And then again, the customer may fear fixed costs not being scalable and things like that. And so you can look at different ways to create these experiences. Again, we have different accelerators for businesses, and you can go to these different places to create your business, or again, it says substitutes. You can rent offices, go to coffee shops, do anything you want. The company, again, is Innovation Warehouses, and the product idea is a startup accelerator, and the ideal customer would be high growth startups. So you have these high growth startups, and they're looking for somewhere to get started, and this would be a value proposition for them. Okay, so now let's look at some mistakes that people make with the value proposition. So this is going to be a list of common student errors when they look at the LLP course and the concepts regarding their understanding of the value proposition. So let's take a look at some of the common mistakes and misconceptions. Okay, so the first bullet says most teams start with a value proposition equal to the feature set. So that's not true. You're not going to start off with every idea in the beginning. You have to realize that you're going to start and you're going to grow, okay? You may think you have every idea already to begin with, but chances are you don't. And so you want to always be open to improvement and changes. The second bullet, confusing product features with pains and gains, okay? So just because your app has some feature, say to change the background color or change the shape of buttons, that may not really be fixing the pains or gains that the customer is looking for. So make sure that you don't confuse features, or that the features you have actually address these pains and gains. The next bullet, forgetting to understand what pains or value propositions are solving, what gains they're creating. Okay? So again, always going back to know what you're trying to do, what problems you're trying to fix, and what things you're trying to improve upon. The next bullet, not articulating painkillers, gain creators, and their idea of what their minimal viable product should be. Okay, so you need to always be able to articulate what your app is going to do, how it's going to fix people's problems, and how it's going to improve their business or their lives, or what it's trying to do. So what is the minimal viable product required to prove the validity of the value proposition hypothesis? Okay, so that's a question. So if you talk to one or two potential customers, do you think that you have enough input? You probably don't. You're probably going to need more input. So that's what brings you to the next bullet. Not enough customer calls. We'll talk about this later, but it really is engaging your customers or your future customers of your product and understanding what they want. It just really comes down to their understanding. You can't build a product and then go out on the street corner and say, come and get it, and expect everybody to buy it. You need to understand who you expect to come buy your product, what they're looking for. And that customer knowledge will help you make your product and your app better. Okay, so the more customer calls you get, the better understanding you have. No hypothesis testing, just demos, product pitches to potential customers. So you really have to have a hypothesis. I think your hypothesis may be that parents have a hard time keeping track of their teenager, knowing that they're safe, and your app is going to help the parents track the teenager and keep them safe. So you need to really understand that and be able to demonstrate that hypothesis and test it. You may think that, well, every parent wants their teenager safe. And you may interview a bunch of parents and find out that they don't. I don't know why that would be, but you never know until you interview people and find out. So that's your hypothesis testing. You want to articulate your experiments to test the hypothesis. And so you need to make sure, just like a good scientist, that not only you have a great experiment going, but that your experiment is truly testing and verifying the things that you want to test. Vague data from the calls, little to no insight derived from the data. Okay, so again, you're going to want to look at the proposition and make sure that you understand it thoroughly, and try and verify that and back that up with actual customer data or surveys. Okay, so we're going to stop here on this slide for today. So this will end this presentation, and we'll have another one coming up shortly. I'll see you again very soon. Let me pull this up one more time. Okay, I'm going to stop the share, and finally, I am going to stop the recording and see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.